Yes, come up here. He's going to talk about sleep and farm ungulates. And he's coming all the way here from the University of PAI as a PhD student.
It's called slowly sleeping from ungulates, it's called review, highly amateur. So for the introduction, we know from lab animals and human studies that sleep is essential to life because sleep deprived rats have passed away maybe after 2 to 3 weeks of sleep deprivation. And sleep is also very important to mood and emotional regulation, and it can lead to depression. And it's also important for metabolism, health, immune function, brain development, heart function, and many others. But what about farm animals? What do we know about them? And is there any relationship between sleep and welfare? So we can categorize welfare in many different ways. The one we just used in this study is this model of the three realms of animal welfare, being biological health and functioning, relating to animal health and biological functioning. So basically, disease can affect sleep in animals as lack of sleep can also lead to disease. And natural living or the ability of animals to express their natural behavior in the places they are being held. So basically, varying environments can decrease sleep in animals as lack of sleep can also change animal behavior. And we have affective states related to the mood and emotions of animals. And we know from human literature that sleep deprivation can increase reactivity in people. And we also know from studies and also our own experiences that stress and anxiety can affect sleep. For example, when you have your first talk on ISAE, you can influence very much as well. So the objectives of this presentation are to describe the types of studies and animals used to study sleep in farm ungulates, identify the methods used to estimate sleep in farm ungulates, and describe the main intentions that researchers had in studying sleep, including how experimental interventions relate to animal welfare. Basically, our scope review has more objectives, but I will just be presenting those today as preliminary results. The material methods, so we have the inclusion and exclusion criteria. So to be included in this review, studies have to be measuring or intervening with sleep, and the population would have to be farm ungulates farmed both in North America and Europe. Exclusion criteria, studies would be excluded if there were not peer-reviewed research articles, not in English, not measuring sleep before 1950, and when animals were used as models for human research. The search, so the preliminary search was performed in 3 databases, CAP Abstracts, PubMed, and Scopus. Coding and appraisal, so we coded them by the general factors as author, title, year of publication, journal, country, animal factors such as type, age, sex, and breed, and methodological factors as sample size and methods to estimate sleep. And finally, we divided those studies in observational and experimental studies, and we categorized them likewise. So for observational studies, we have mainly the categories of describing sleep, validating methods, life stage. And for experimental, we have biological function, affective states, and natural living. The results, so we found 492 studies reported to screening. We took out some duplicates, 1,069 studies. Then 23 studies were screened by title and abstract. 2654 irrelevant studies were found, leaving us with 368 studies to full text assessment. And that got us with 76 studies in the end, and then we completed a hand search. We found 6 additional studies, leaving us with 82 studies in total. The publications, so basically, sleep studies were very popular in the 70s, and they were decreasing in the 80s and the 90s, and they went back to increase in the 20s with this boom in the 2020s. There we are right now, and the observational studies set like a base to experimental trials, and so the 2020s is the first decade that we have more experimental than observational. The ungulates species represented in those studies. So the number of studies, we have in total 82 studies. 43 were in bovine species. Then we have 13 in ovine and equine. Then 9 in porcine and 5 in caprine. Different life stages. So most of the animals were adult animals, followed by infant animals. Then we have some in adolescent, fetus, and weeks. Although we know that life stage is a very important factor for sleep, so we should not mix animals from different life stages in the same study. Methods to estimate sleep. So 29% of the papers use polysomnography. That's the gold standard for measuring sleep. So we have the electropopulography, electromyography, and and the EEG. And basically, those sensors are going to be measuring the EEG is going to be measuring the brain waves, the EMG, the muscular waves, the muscle activity, and the EEG is going to be measuring the ocular activity. 49% of the papers use sleep-like behavior to measure sleep, and this was like the greatest method used. But we have some problems with this method. So the studies, because we have a lot of variation among those studies. So basically, we had like studies that use scan samples from 5 to 20 minutes, and we don't have actually any method any validation on scan samples to measure sleep in animals, because mostly the bouts can occur like for 1 minute, so scans might be missing a lot of sleep. And also, we only have validation for sleep-like behavior in cows and calves. And this is not a good method to estimate sleep in cows, but it is a good method to estimate sleep in calves. The total sleeping time at least, but not to differentiate between sleep stages. And we had also some studies with sensors. Those are increasing lately. The observational studies, we had 3 main categories: validation of methods to estimate sleep, and is the first one that we had more studies in. And basically 85% of those studies are in bovine species. Only 2 of those are in non-bovine species. Then we have sleep over different life states and studies describing sleep in general. Some experimental studies, we had 39 in total, and from those, 21 were in biological health and functioning. Some example are studies sleep depriving animals, and those are a little bit different because we have sleep as an intervention and not as an outcome. So basically, we have this study in horses showing that sleep deprivation is going to impair the horses to perform a cognitive task. Natural living, we have some types of behaviors, for example, suckling behavior. And we know from this study that animals suckling, either from the den or from a bucket, had slept longer. In affective states, we only have 2 studies relating sleep with affective states in farm animals, ungulates, sorry. And those are in pain related to castration or disbudding, and it affected sleep. The summary, the gaps in literature. So basically, we don't still have many studies relating sleep with affective states, and not many studies in non-bovine species, especially those validating methods, although we have several studies in non-bovine species with methods that we still don't know if they're really measuring sleep or not. The next steps, we're going to be publishing the protocol of this review. And some acknowledgements. I would like to acknowledge Research Discovery Grant for financing this research, and also Premiers Christina Dwelling and Nina von Kaiserling for some help throughout this process. That's it. Thank you.